Well, that story is making headlines on the front page of the Financial Review tomorrow. Trump defies Congress is the headline there, of course, talking about that address that he made to a rally in Michigan. An enraged and defiant Donald Trump lashed out at his Democratic tormentors after they made him the third president in US history to be impeached, setting the scene for a bitterly rancorous 2020 election that will determine the limits of White House power and accountability. Now, we do have a little bit of that speech that Donald Trump did make at that rally. Let's take a bit of a listen to what he had to say.
It threatens to destroy what our founders pledged and, in fact, their very lives to build. You are the ones interfering in America's elections. You are the ones subverting America's democracy. We did nothing wrong, nothing whatsoever. This was just an excuse. You are the ones obstructing justice. You are the ones bringing pain and suffering to our republic for your own selfish, personal, political, and partisan gain. They're bringing pain.
Now, Michael, it was inevitable that this day was going to come, but I'm interested on your thoughts on what impact this might have on Donald Trump as we head into that election next year. You hear him at that rally there, you hear his supporters just cheering so loudly as he's making that speech. I mean, do you think that this is going to damage him at all, or is it more likely that it will sort of rally those rusted-on supporters to sort of get in behind him ahead of that poll next year?
There's a number of points here. One is Gallup, and although the pollsters have fallen into disrepute somewhat in the Western world in the recent past, Gallup has him 6 points up on what he was when the impeachment began. Even those people who believe that he did do something wrong, many of them believe they ought to be able to make the decision themselves. It shouldn't be up to other politicians. If we don't like him, we should be able to vote him out. But I tell you, from my own observations of the US, and I really do enjoy to go there, many Americans do not ever think about what happens outside of the American landmass, nor do they care. And I just don't believe it really is a big issue for most of them. The Democrats have tried to put on this theatre, saying, look at this awful man. It's coming from the point of view of he should never have been there in the first place. Really, I don't go to the meetings. They don't ask me my opinion. But if they did, I'd say you might have been better off trying to promote what the Democrats have to offer rather than trying to destroy this fella in the last 12 months or so of his presidency.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting point because Donald Trump really has spent the past 3.5 years running this line that, you know, talking about the elites on the east and the west coast, you know, almost like Scott Morrison's line about the Canberra bubble. It's sort of the same line, and this is probably a story that falls right into that. It'll be interesting to see whether it affects those voters in Middle America, those voters who really are going to decide whether Donald Trump is re-elected or not. We might just have a look at the front page of the Australian newspaper because this story obviously is featuring prominently there as well. Predictable partisan impeachment and assault on America is the headline on this story by Cameron Stewart. It says it was appropriate that when Donald Trump became only the third US president to be impeached, he was in a place called Battle Creek urging his loyal supporters to deliver a fiery revenge to Democrats in next year's election. What do you think, Michael? Is that fiery revenge going to occur next year?
Yeah, look, I think that exactly what Mike said is the case, that that all the people that are you know, galvanised behind the president are going to be more galvanised behind the president. All of those that you know, are determined to vote him out next year are going to be even more determined to vote him out next year. I think that it's really probably a short-term gain for the Democrats that might ultimately backfire for them because this plays right into Donald Trump's hands. It gives him you know, a great narrative to continue that everyone's out to get him. These elites in Washington, you know, the leader of the swamp, Nancy Pelosi, is out to get him. And I think this is why the Democrats are and ahed so much about the strategy here, and they eventually, you know, decide, yep, let's go for this short-term gain. But you know, all the polls are showing that most Americans think that, yeah, look, maybe he did the wrong thing, but is it an impeachable offence? Probably not, and they're not that engaged with it. So I think you're going to have more of the same two sides shouting. It's a very divisive tool, political tool to use in this case, and Donald Trump, I think, will just be rubbing his hands with glee because it does give him a chance to really galvanise his support base, the ones that elected him, 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think what's really going to matter is whether those voters that matter will say, well, have I got a job that I didn't have 4 years ago? Am I being paid more than I was 4 years ago? Is my life better now than it was 4 years ago? I think that will determine whether Donald Trump gets re-elected or not this impeachment process that's going on at the moment.